All right, what's up, friendos? Welcome back. The year's 2025, and it's been 6 years since I first heard the phrase, cryptocurrency games are the future, old man. Get with the times or stay poor. We all know 6 years is enough time for games to have been developed, especially with the hundreds of millions of dollars some of these projects have raised. When we laughed at crypto games back in 2019, 2020, admittedly fair criticism could have been that we were too early, that they really needed time to produce the games. And so while we continued to laugh, we did wait, and here we are, 2025. To do this in the fairest way possible, I wanted to use objective data to pick which games I was going to try for this video, because every time before now I've done this, Crypto Bros paused their 100th rewatch of The Wolf of Wall Street to, ham fist type, probably one finger type on the keyboard, that I'm just a filthy no-coiner who cherry picks bad games to make them look bad. Unfortunately, the method of doing this was an absolute disaster. I'll show some of the games that I found using this method, but after having done so, I had to change the way I was going to do it, because even I felt bad for how bad this stuff looked. What I was doing was using a website called DAP Radar and noting down the monthly trending games which had the most active users. Because say whatever you will about crypto gaming, but they do have one positive thing for somebody like me: numbers, easily accessible numbers. You might lie, I might lie, but there's two things that don't lie: Shakira's hips and the blockchain. Using DAP Radar, we can see exactly how many users each of these games has on a daily basis, exactly how much money is exchanging hands in the playing of these games, and then using those numbers against them, we can, look at exactly what the people are using, because surely the best representation of their whole market is what's being used within that market, right? So without further ado, let's go. Let's dive deep and showcase the best games in the cryptocurrency world. First, I took a snapshot of DAP Radar in July, and the number one game by a country mile is called Chronicles. I downloaded the game in July. I tried to play it. I was going to make a video about it, and fortunately or unfortunately, I decided not to. And then when clearing some space on my hard drive in August, I lost the footage. Suffice to say, you're not missing much, because it's an absolute abomination. Take the worst elements of the most predatory dogshit mobile game you've ever seen, and then dial it all up to 11. Remove any potential for artistic direction, slap in some weird furry characters, and then make the game load infinitely slower than any mobile game does because of the blockchain integration, having to, save your progress every time you do a single thing in the game. In an hour of playing, you'll be subjected to something that is worse than the worst gaming experiences, somehow making mobile games look like you're drinking champagne out of a fine crystal glass. Chronicles was described as an MMORPG, open source, decentralized, powered by the players, for the players. The description makes it sound like it was everything that the Crypto Bros had been preaching about for the last 6 years. A game that could run forever, that gave the players control over their own assets, that you could, have this perpetual marketplace and make money and sell and buy things. And what we got instead was a leaderboard, fear of missing out, AFK cookie clicker game with every single greedy element you can think of. Gacha, yeah, of course they've got that. Crafting that you can skip to make better stuff with money. Yeah, of course. Time limited packs, leaderboards, power-ups. Think of something that could make a game that is already bad just complete pay-to-win trash, and this game has it. And then remind yourself that this game is doing tens of thousands of dollars per day in daily transactions, even having some inexplicable or, unexplainable days where they have $6 million of transactions. And this, going by the numbers, is one of the top 10 most played cryptocurrency games. So at this point, I was asking myself, why would anybody choose to waste their time or their money on this absolute garbage? Because in life, I can think something isn't good, so can you. A personal judgment, right? Subjectivity. But I can also put myself outside of myself and look at something and think, oh, I don't like it, but I can see why somebody else would. I can say I don't like watching sports, but I understand why somebody else would enjoy watching sports. I don't see a single reason why anyone would play this. Play, I guess, is a pretty loose term that we're using. But then I remembered, what was another selling point? There's decentralization, there's owning your own assets, then there's play to earn, right? Is that what I was missing here? Is play to earn carrying this game? You remember, right? Play to earn would be the reason that gamers would flock to crypto games in the future, according to the crypto bros, because doing something as a hobby and enjoying yourself is something only poor people and idiots do. Every single waking moment of your life should be devoted to the Sigma male grind set. If you're going to waste your time being a brokey playing video games, you'd really be better off just getting yourself in the salt mines of Moria and farming until your fingers are bloody for a few cents in the soul-crushing husk of a video game instead. Because money. At this point, I decided to go and look up if people were making big money playing this game, and maybe that's why, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars was exchanging hands, and why the game had probably earned tens of millions of dollars by now. What I found was that the game's currency was worth a few cents each, and the game rewarded you for non-repeatable achievements in the game, such as hitting level milestones. The milestones would be like, complete a certain stage of our AFK game by just simply leaving it running for however many hours it would take. And then they'd give you 5 of their currency, so a fraction of $1, an amount unlikely to even cover the running of the electricity on your device. So the idea you're earning from playing simply doesn't exist. We knew it never would, of course, because that's silly. How could it? But in true cryptocurrency fashion, there's more. You can buy their currency, known as NCG, and then stake it. And this means you buy magic internet money that exists solely to speculate on the future value, and then you lock it up on their system with an inability to access or trade it for however long they decide the lockup period is. For doing this, they give you rewards on the blockchain. These rewards are, of course, completely pay to win, but due to them being on the blockchain, they're also sellable to other players, meaning you buy the tokens for real money, you lock them up for, however long it's going to be, and then they return you rewards, which you can sell for their currency to other players and then convert, presumably, back into another currency that has a real world value. Not super complicated. I'm probably making it sound worse than it is. Basically, they give you game items, you sell game items to other players for their token, and then that token, assuming that, there's still liquidity in the game system and people want to buy these things and want to buy their token, you can probably then convert their token to Ethereum and then Ethereum to real world money. And the rewards become better on a tiered system based on how much of their token you stake. So basically, their biggest one, you can lock up 10 million tokens for, get this, a 259.9% APR. A totally sustainable and believable return on investment if you're a fucking child, I guess. Because you know what they always say when you spot something that's a scam? It's if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And anything promising hundreds of % of return is the definition of too good to be true. They're outperforming the best investors on the planet with this one, with a token for a game that I can't really see many people playing, to be honest, but somehow I guess is making money. For this to even make sense, you just have to believe that generating from thin air an insanely large amount of items in a game won't cause hyperinflation and therefore tank the price of the items and therefore make it worth less and then make the token worth less and then, of course, completely collapse. You would have to be naive to think that this will work out in the long run, but here we are. It's crypto land, baby. So your options for play to earn here, as almost every single crypto game I've seen has been, is to either earn less money than you would gain from walking around outside your local store for 30 minutes picking up pennies or, tin cans and turning them into the recycling plant, or spending thousands of dollars on fake internet money tied to a uniquely dogshit game and hoping that this is somehow a sound financial decision. Truly the future of finance and fun. But hey, Kira, this doesn't represent the crypto game market, right? In fact, you cherry-picked this one by using data you don't control. And actually, this game is bad, but it's one of the only ones on the planet that anyone's actually interacting with on the blockchain, aka the entire fucking reason that the tech is in the games in the first place. But that being said, obviously the market has moved on. This is now like 8th or something, which is still a pretty damning indictment of the entire scene. But we can move on to some other ones and check those out. Unfortunately, what I found was, surprise, surprise, something about the numbers used in crypto and how people are interacting with these things makes the numbers useless because they're a fugazi. Because the next game on the list was Alien Worlds. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, if 9 Chronicles was bad and I couldn't bring myself to replay the tutorial to show you the gameplay footage, I was never going to download this one. Spoiler, some games we come up to in a little bit I will download and show you the footage of me playing. But for this one, I'll just read you the description and ask you why the fuck would this one be up there on the leaderboards. Immediately, when you click play now on their website, you're greeted with a browser interface that shows you what they call the NFT inventory. Despite signing up for nothing, this thing has zero explanation and looks like a true regression from the browser games I used to play in IT class during high school. Wonder why I failed that one. Aside from that, they apparently have a mobile game you can play. The thing launched apparently a month ago on July 17th and has 100 downloads. So if this is the future, the community must be stuck right alongside me in the past. But I mean, who am I to talk shit when this is their trailer?
Enter the arena. Traverse dynamic arenas with speed and precision. Outmaneuver opponents in tactical turn-based combat. Make strategic use of limited consumables. Activate powerful racial abilities to turn the tide. And collect skins to customize your character's look. Go on, spread a little mayhem today.
All 149 views and 4 likes, and yet on chain, there's millions of dollars moving hands across months of operation. How? Why? You know, I'm not here to speculate, but yeah, again, just random days. 10k, 70k, 100k, $4.7 million in a day, but only 100 people viewing the video of their latest game release. Surely this would be a big deal, right? But of course it isn't. People just spending money, moving money, who knows what's going on there. At this point, I really thought to myself, me cherry picking the games that would be funny to look at was probably going to yield better results than what the on-chain data was showing me, because apparently what people are interacting with in the blockchain world is gambling, things that aren't even games, or games that are worse than mobile games. So instead, I decided to just go to crypto YouTube, you know, try to find one of these creators that have an audience and not just hundreds of thousands of subscribers back when they used to promise giveaways and then never give them away. You know the ones, right, where every video is somebody soy jacking over earn $40 a day playing this fucking terrible game, and then every comment is somebody posting their blockchain address hoping that they'll be given some money for some reason. Just basically the Oliver Twist, please sir, can I have some more? Just hoping that somebody's going to slop some crypto into their bowls. Oh, I did forget that the other half of the comments is people saying, actually go look at the game that I'm invested into because I've put lots of money in and I need to make it back. So please talk about it, because hopefully that means somebody will buy the things that I spent too much money on. Please, please, before my wife finds out. So I sorted through the recent videos of some of these channels and I came across something that looked fairly promising. It was a game called Calamity. This was right in my alley. You know, I like MMOs, I like RPGs, and this is apparently an action RPG that's also on Steam. The art style looks cool, and since it's on Steam, I won't have to download some ridiculously shady client no one's ever heard of that definitely won't mine Bitcoin on my PC when I'm asleep. So I figured, why not? Let's give it a shot. And you know what I found? The game was down for maintenance, so I went to their Discord and discovered I just hit it at the wrong time because the latest update was releasing in the next hour, which was good because obviously I'd be getting, you know, the cool best new version of the game. And in their Discord, I could see dozens, maybe even hundreds of people excited to log in and play, which is a good sign because usually for crypto games, what you find is when you go to their social media, nobody's interacting with them. When you go to the Discord, it's completely dead, apart from a few people talking about what color Lambo they're going to buy when the coin moons. Calamity, at first glance, is a charming little old school inspired action RPG with MMO elements. They describe it on Steam as, quote, an action RPG with engaging classic gameplay you love, conquer dungeons, challenge players, and gear up with epic loot in a world with a player-driven economy. Which sounds promising, right? But let's just remember, there isn't a single thing that these people will not ruin. They can take the most basic, the most novel concept and then soak it in human piss, all for a handful of dollars. Not life-changing money even, just enough to buy a Starbucks every day for the next month or so. Calamity threw me into a short tutorial, which exposed some of the worst game controls I've experienced in recent years, but nothing I couldn't get used to, before dropping me into the town hub, which seemed to revolve around this portal, and doing dungeons which would scale in difficulty as you progress. So I hopped into the first dungeon, where I immediately discovered a really troubling buff in the top left corner of my screen, which to me read like I could only play for 1 hour of game time before I wouldn't be able to play the game anymore. So I stuck around for what was an incredibly repetitive and deeply flawed game experience to see if my suspicions were true, and you know what? They were. This was, in their own words, I'll quote them, an action-packed RPG that revives the engaging gameplay of legendary titles such as World of Warcraft, Lineage, Diablo, Albion Online, and even Dota, that, quote, values the hardcore and grindy essence of classic RPGs. But the game is a dollar store version of a free-to-play MMO you could find on Steam Early Access, with 1 hour of gameplay per day allowed for free-to-play players, and then you need to buy dungeon time to progress in the game. In my 25 years of playing MMOs, I must have missed this concept, to be honest. Now, you could say that this is just the free trial, and, you know, some of those games like World of Warcraft have a paid subscription, and you can't even play without the subscription. I would say, of course, they have a longer trial than this, where you can do more stuff, but they are also fully fledged released games, and they're good. They're the best reviewed games. They're the ones that you call legendary. They're the ones that have the millions of player base and the long development run times and the success. And this is what feels like an alpha test with a few hundred players, and it's also selling NFT factories that allow people to pay crypto tokens to, quote, accelerate their progress. Just in general, a complete pile of shit. Completely irredeemable, and something Steam should absolutely not allow on the platform, in line with their own rules of not allowing blockchain games. Although many blockchain games get around this rule by simply disabling the blockchain elements through the Steam client, but then allowing people to play and hoping they're going to stop playing via Steam and download from their website or Epic Games to engage with those blockchain elements. Based on the gameplay and the inability for free-to-play players to play the game longer than an hour each day, however, I don't think we need to be worried. Much like every other crypto game that comes out, probably won't be around long enough for this to be an issue. With this being said, I decided to give one last game a try because I hadn't punished myself enough for the sake of content. The method so far hadn't shown me anything to promise. I was disappointed, and I had no expectations at all. Somehow everything was worse than I even imagined. I decided to venture into, old grounds, a game I'd covered on the channel a handful of times for varying reasons. Star Atlas, the Star Citizen from Temu for people with less sense and more money than the Star Citizen player base, which is a fucking wild sentence to say. The game was offering free beta keys to anyone who wanted to try it out. All I had to do was sign in with my email, redeem it on Epic, and hope that, unlike most other crypto games I've tried in the past few months and the past few years, that it hadn't already closed down or had exactly 0 players online at all hours of the day. Star Atlas, much like most other crypto games, have tried to split up their game into modules to provide at least some playable experience for the hundreds of millions of dollars they've had access to over the years of development. Instead of building out a whole game from the foundation and giving people access to something that would constantly evolve, instead you can join one of a handful of disjointed, disparate game modes and then hope that somehow, some way, one day all of these things just get mashed together into a massively different game that combines all of these playable experiences. With that being the case, you would expect that these tiny vertical slices would be fun, complete, promising, have some kind of redeemable quality, and you would of course be wrong, because after trying to find a game on the third-person shooter experience on the EU servers, I was greeted by exactly 0 players online, which didn't bode well. Luckily, there was a handful of people in the NA server, and I got to play the game. I got to try it, I got to be a real gamer running around and shooting people in a game I'd never played before. And it was a lobby of crypto bros who were really, really bad because they don't actually play games. And I can only describe this as one of the most floaty, low-impact, $3 Steam Early Access gunplay I've ever experienced. Not only that, but we were on the only map I assume that exists in the game, which was annoying to navigate and had almost no textures on it. The only remotely cool thing about this game was the jetpack movement, but aside from that, the weapons sucked, the hit registration and feel was terrible, and it was just overall an incredibly poor introduction to the game. And we have to remember, this game has raised hundreds of millions of dollars. Following this, I thought I'd give the other game modes a try because they can't all be as bad as this, right? The main one that had the big button to click, you know, the one that invites you in, it's a different color, it's bigger, and you think, wow, this is the thing that they really want you to play, right? It invited me in, it was the big deal. It was called Enter Galia, a single-player open world. This dropped me into a hangar. It showed me dozens of ships that you could presumably buy with thousands of dollars, hoping for some reason that the game would both materialize and be worth playing once it did. I selected the only ship I had access to, presumably the free one that everyone gets access to. I watched it spawn and then hopped aboard. I quickly realized that the Star Citizen from Temu was a much more accurate description than I thought. The ship had hardly any interactive elements, and then I couldn't help but laugh when one of only like 3 interactive elements that I could actually use was a gunner seat that literally didn't even do anything except have my character turn into one of those air-blowing mascot things with the wavy arms, and then a pilot seat that whenever I clicked made my entire screen turn black and sometimes crashed my game. Even when I got out of the seat, I could hear my character shooting, running around, doing things, but the screen remained black. And then, of course, if I tried to get on again, it would crash. No matter how many times I tried, I couldn't get the ship to actually do anything to even try the game in the first place. So their main feature, the big grand experience that they're advertising, was this. It was a gun game tucked away behind a few menus with less than 6 people playing it, and a single-player open-world experience that ended before I could even get to see the ship interface. Oh, and before I forget, there was also this thing called Fleet Command, but if you look at it, you'll see exactly why I opened it and closed that menu as soon as it loaded. But at least it did load, I guess, so, you know, bonus points for that compared to the other stuff. And that's where I'm going to leave it for this one. You know, 6 years, billions of dollars, and this is the cryptocurrency gaming market. I have no doubt I'm going to be accused again of cherry-picking the worst games to make them look bad, but I tried an impartial method of using data provided by the blockchain websites to see what's being played the most. That didn't work. Apparently, those aren't good enough. Then I tried to look at their influencers, the ones with, you know, hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube and Twitter and things like that, and see what was getting the most recent views on their videos, and that didn't work. So then I went to the most funded, the ones that get the most views on YouTube, the ones that have raised the most money, and that didn't work either. So I'm not really sure where I need to look, to be honest, but I'm sure there will be people in the comments saying you should have played X, you should have played Y, you should have played Z. And I'm going to read those comments and I will go and try them because I'm curious, I'm a curious guy, and if there is something that never gets old, it's hearing that actually this is the game of the future, and then I download it and it's something that wouldn't even reach 1,000 concurrent players on Steam 1 week after release. Or it's a game like Off the Grid, which has a player base on Steam and is actually a fairly enjoyable game if you treat it as like an early access Steam release. But none of the blockchain elements are actually in the game, and none of the Steam player base is playing for those elements, therefore making a blockchain game being completely irrelevant. Because removing all that stuff, people are still playing the game, which means that the game would probably do much better if you just remove the time that they spent on that and use the time to make the game better. Thus proving that one of the only games that's managed to maintain a player base of real people on Steam while being a technical blockchain game, I guess, is better off without the blockchain. That being said, you know, suggest content you want to see me cover, and if you want to support me and my content, feel free to check out the links in the video description. Game subs if you want to buy some cool anime-inspired merch or flavored gamer powder. Discord if you want to suggest something for me to look at, and social media if you want to see the one tweet I make every 6 months. Either way, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.